Robert, I mean, which one do we start with? Let's start with Letitia James. I don't even know if it was on our menu, but I got it. How outrageously inappropriate is it for her to be tweeting the amount of the Engoron Award and then the next day tweeting the interest on that award? Is there not an ethics body that can sanction her for doing this?
Well, why would they? They're all controlled by people that align with her politically.
Just because it's over the top. I mean, they got murderers in jail in New York. Is Letitia James saying
they don't care? It's clear that the partisan left will weaponize every power they have to go after the other side. They don't care about ethics. They don't care about law. They've made that crystal clear over the last half decade. The fact that Fani Willis is even a district attorney is an example of that. The fact that Letitia James, the multiple courts had the opportunity, including federal courts in New York and Florida, to stop this sham proceeding from even occurring in New York when you had the most overt select prosecution that has ever occurred in the history of the country. Our First Amendment prohibits targeting someone for political purposes. That it always has. Now, our courts have done a lousy job enforcing that, but that's always been the law. Here you had someone who ran for office promising to get Trump, not based on anything he'd done, based on just who he was politically, and saying that she would find something. The old Berea principle, show me the man and I'll find you the crime, the notorious head of the Secret Service of the Soviet Union. And that's what she did. And then a proceeding that was such an embarrassment to the rule of law and so precarious to business that you got people like Kevin O'Leary going ballistic on it.
And I think Mark Cuban was the latest one to go ballistic as well, if I'm not mistaken. It's
because anybody that has any sense can see, okay, if you're saying the state can take out anybody it politically likes, regardless of anything they did under the law that was wrong, then why on God's green earth would I invest in your state? You'd have to be insane. It would be a dereliction of your duty to your investors if it's a corporation to actually do business in New York, just like or to do business in Illinois or to do business in California or to keep incorporated in Delaware. They've all made very clear they will politically weaponize their courts to go after people regardless of the law. The credibility and confidence in the American legal system is collapsing around the world, just as it's collapsed in American financial and political power because of the sanctions issued against Russia. That led to a global flight of a lot of capital, and it's going to continue to lead to global flight of a lot of capital, but especially and particularly from these states. So much of the governor's trying to go around saying, don't worry, we just targeted Trump. We wouldn't target you. That doesn't appease anybody. They're like, oh, so what? So you're saying, well, if the attorney general doesn't like me for some reason, I'm the same DOA. I mean, it was such a ridiculous and disproportionate fine. Credit to President Trump. He started talking about this being an excessive fine the day after we talked about it on the show.
Because we had discussed it. What would be his constitutional rights at the state level? Is it the Eighth Amendment, Robert?
Yes. And that's a Supreme Court of the United States issue. And so he shared it. It's good that he's raising those issues. Now, there's some confusion out there because of the phraseology. It's not, you don't have to post bond in order to appeal. You can always appeal. That they can't deny you that. What they can do is they can collect on the judgment while the appeal is pending. Now, if they collect on the judgment and they lose on appeal, they then have to pay Trump not only the value of whatever they collected, but also interest on it.
The interest at 9%.
Correct. That is why frequently you don't try to collect on a judgment pending appeal, because you don't want to be on the hook for the interest if it's a big judgment.
This is just to simplify this if other people are not necessarily following. The whole issue is everyone was under the impression if he appeals, he's got to post either the full $450 million plus interest in a court whatever the court file, or a bond where he's got to get a bond company to post up the rest and he puts up 10%. You're saying, Robert, if he doesn't do it, he has the right to appeal, they can start to execute, but they might say, well, we're not necessarily even going to do that if he appeals without
if they were
posting.
Smart. Letitia James came out and said she would. Said she would go out and try to immediately collect, seize the properties, and do whatever they wanted with them, which could have massively negative impact. I mean, because let's say they seize a property and they try to discount its value and sell it to an insider or something else, they could end up on the hook for a lot more money than they get back. And so she's gambling with the state of New York. And this is happening because Trump hatred consumes the professional class, legal class left that's so delusional and so conspiratorial that they are willing to breach every standard of legal care, every ethical duty and obligation, every sensible economic interest in order to just get Trump. They're willing to cross every river, every Rubicon, burn every bridge. It shows how dangerous it was to put people with this kind of ideology that is more of an idolatry in power, and they're just revealing it to the world. And what they did to Alex Jones in the Connecticut and Texas cases, which was a complete embarrassment to the rule of law and any sense of impartial justice, which the American legal system has been globally known for, was a sign of what was to come. And now they're just doing it to Trump, and it still shocks people to see it at this scale. That that they never proved any fraud. That the people who were supposedly defrauded said they weren't defrauded, and said in fact it was a great deal and they would do it again, and wish they could do it again. It's the most it's similar to Amos Miller's case, right? In the name of protecting the banks that said they liked the deal, you have to bankrupt Trump. Just like in the name of protecting Amos Miller's consumers, you have to take away their right to buy his food when they're demanding the right to buy his food. It's perverse. It's Soviet mindset. It's not a surprise. The professional class was the true fountain and foundation of the communist movement and much of the fascistic. And so there are people that are dangerous in power, and they're revealing it to the whole world.
Let me show you this, Robert. It's the end of the vlog, but here is this.
Average of 50 a year. That's
no here. Where was it?
Embarrassing.
Here we go. Listen to this.
I believe that this president is incompetent. I believe that this president is ill-equipped to serve.
I think this was
in the
2018.
highest office of this land, and I believe that he is an embarrassment to all that we stand for.
All right, listen to
He
this.
should be charged with obstructing
Charges
justice.
of obstructing justice.
I believe that
What?
the president of these United States can be indicted for criminal offenses, and we would join with law enforcement and other attorneys general across this nation in removing this president from office. In addition to that, the office of Attorney General will continue to follow the money because we believe that
Listen to
he's
this.
engaged in a pattern and practice of money laundering the money from foreign governments here in New York State, and particularly related to his real estate holdings. It's important that everyone
I hate her
understand
so
that the
much.
days of Donald Trump are coming to an end.
The days
But we
of
can only
Donald
do
Trump
it
are
if all of
coming
you
to an
ex-
end. Obstruction of justice. What? Just obstruction of justice.
Well, and that's the extraordinary thing of how innocent Trump really is. She did a microscopic review of everything Trump has ever done in New York, and she could come up with nothing. Come up with absolutely nothing. All she could come up with is she didn't agree with his statements of how wealthy he can be. That had no impact on any financial or banking transaction. Now, one interesting tidbit is what the court will do if a surety, an independent surety, comes in and posts bond and says they're going to post bond because the real value of Mar-a-Lago is closer to $500 million, not 18 million. Are they going to try to challenge the surety then and try to prohibit the surety from posting that bond because they don't agree with it? The surety, has independent authority, and traditionally their power is not challenged and their decisions not challenged. And so it's likely he can post bond. He has the same issue in the federal court case where the federal judge that's trying to railroad him in those ridiculous E. Jean Carroll proceedings.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's extraordinary is to go after Trump. They found the most incredulous methods to do so because the guy's so clean.
Well,
they couldn't imagine he's as clean as he is. That they kept projecting the crimes of the Clintons and the crimes of the Bidens onto him when he's never done those things.
They literally had to change the law in New York State to allow E. Jean Carroll to sue on her hallucination, and then they granted her the $85 million. They literally had to change the
An
law.
absurd verdict that she joked about going on a shopping spree with Rachel Madcow on.
Oh, where she's going to go to the Bergdorf.
And what's extraordinary is that they don't recognize the backlash here. You shouldn't lose the Kevin O'Learys of the world. Kevin O'Leary's not some big Trump supporter, right? I mean, when you have these kind of people saying, hold on a second, you should realize you've gone way too far. When he continues to surge in the polls, utterly crushed Nikki Haley despite a bunch of left-leaning Democrats who identified as independents. Michael Tracy misinterpreted the poll data. It's like, well, only 5% were Democrats. Those are people who admitted being Democrats. Almost all the independents said that voted in South Carolina primary, admitted they voted for Joe Biden in 2020. All right, those are Democrats. They might call themselves independent. they're Democrats. Despite all those Democrats, she still lost by 20 points in her own home state, despite outspending him 20-1, and despite having the media in her back pocket. So, I mean, that's the country is rebelling against all of this, and I think that but it's going to be up to the Supreme Court to fix this, because this is an embarrassment to the rule of law. What happened to Musk in Delaware is an embarrassment to the rule of law. What's happening to Trump in New York and in D.C. and in the documents case are all embarrassment to the rule of law. And we'll see if the judge in the Florida case steps up, because she has multiple grounds to completely dismiss those indictments.
Can they use these tweets from Leticia James as evidence in appeal of malice or anything?
Oh, sure. I mean, because he had the most robust selective prosecution case ever. And the First Amendment is supposed to prohibit politically motivated prosecutions. And this is the most overt, open, politically motivated prosecution in history, and especially with Leticia James, it's the most egregious. And so for her for this case not to have been long ago dismissed or enjoined by the federal courts is an embarrassment to the rule of law, and it shows how empty our First Amendment protection is. I mean, now every country in the world will cite this as an example.
Putin's already laughing about it. Everybody on Earth should be laughing about it, and I guess only Justin Trudeau is saying justice at last.